Okay. Hello, everyone. You guys, you can unmute now. So I did the intro. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's Jeff, aka Godless Scummer. Thanks for coming along to my channel tonight. I have a special guest tonight. I have Ed, aka Grumpy Old Dude. To come along tonight. And my very good friend Momma Manda, aka Momma Atheist, is also kindly agreed to co-host this with me today. And this could be an interesting conversation. Now, for those who don't know Ed, what he does, Ed, one time in his life, Ed's a former white supremacist. Who has now since obviously left that and now speaks out against white supremacy and hate groups in general. So I think Ed's got quite an amazing story. So hopefully we can talk a bit about tonight. It's a little bit about Ed's story, but also how we, how we can sort of best combat hate groups in that today. So I think this could be an interesting conversation. So let's see what we've got in the chat. So I say hello to Amber. Obviously Grumpy, well, he's here anyway. Hello Math Pig. Critical Cripple Dave and Santi here in the chat as well. So welcome everyone. So guys, how are you both doing today? So I'll ask you first, Ed. How are we getting on? How were we today?
Old. I'm hanging in there though. I'm making it.
Cool. How about you, Mando? I should know we spoke earlier, but
yeah. Actually, I went into town today, and there was a lovely group of assholes, none of whom were wearing masks, all standing around protecting one of the Confederate statues in my town. So that was
how lovely.
Yeah. Speaking of hate groups, just saying.
Yeah. I don't understand it. Like, they were not ever American heroes at any point ever. Were they American heroes? They were the enemy of the United States. If you want to be the enemy of the United States, pack your bags and leave. I'm over it. Like, there's no discussion here. I had somebody trying to tell me they were given veterans benefits and, all kinds of other stuff through Congress. No, they were not. The only thing they ever got was the right to be buried in national cemeteries if they had earned the proper qualifications or whatever, something above and beyond the call of duty. And the only reason they did that is because where else are you going to bury them? They died here in the 1800s.
These were traitors to our country.
Yes.
They committed acts of sedition because they wanted to own people, people. And I love that they try to change the narrative here in the South and say, it was about states' rights and all this bullshit. Well,
no, it wasn't.
The right to own slaves. I
will actually argue that was the narrative they spun during the period of the Civil War as well. Because obviously they, in a lot of ways, do something to get say your average Southern man who wasn't a rich slave owner on board as well. So that's one of the narratives that was spun even during the time with states' rights.
And then you look at the articles for secession from Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama, and they specifically start off with, we are, fighting this battle because of Northern aggression against our right to own slaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
well, it's the famous, was it called the, oh, sorry, Mando. I was going to say, there's a famous, well, I think it's called the Cornerstone speech by Alexander Hamilton, who was the vice president of the Confederacy. And he made no bones about it that they're saying that our nation, the Confederate States of America, is the First Nation, that is founded on the principle that black people are not the equals of whites. He was very, very clear about it.
Yeah.
So
Alexander Hamilton was our first treasurer, and he was not a Southerner, or you were speaking of Alexander Stevens. Alexander Hamilton, the man shot by Aaron Burr, and he was a good guy. Other than the adultery and whatnot, but I'm a big Hamilton fan, so I'm just making sure.
Sorry, I was thinking my Alexander's mixed up.
Yeah, that's fine.
There, yeah.
That was a good catch because I missed it.
Very good catch. Yeah,
Alex was.
That's right. Alexander. I'll tell you why it was. Alexander Stevens. His middle name was Hamilton. That was why. It's Alexander Hamilton Stevens. That's why I made the mistake there. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Amanda and I actually we're planning at some point in the future doing a bit of a dive into the Civil War and the as a stream idea. So perhaps maybe dispelling some myths. I mean, obviously, we've got our biases, which we're not making any bones about, but it's definitely a fascinating topic to me kind of personally.
I think so. Biases.
Yeah.
I honestly, I have never met a foreigner that knows as much about the Civil War as Jeff, and I know Americans that don't know anywhere near as much as him. So
I got a few books down here. Like, just pick that one out at random. That's just about the state of Missouri, and the Civil War. To be honest, I got about a dozen books down there on the U.S. Civil War. We're getting a little off of. Obviously, in a certain way, it relates to what we're talking about. But
something I just wanted to point out is the fact that the almost all of these Confederate statues were not, made after the Civil War, during the Civil War. They were done either in the 20s or the 60s as a fuck you to minorities from specifically a lot of the times the Ku Klux Klan. It comes from hate groups putting their foot down and saying this is our country, so to speak. So
the popularization of the Confederate battle flag was something I think that hate groups adopted, because it wasn't really that used until the 20th century. I mean, this is the thing that's sometimes mistakenly called the Confederate flag. It wasn't the official flag of the Confederacy. So.
No.
Anyway,
what's interesting is it is illegal to fly the Nazi, the swastika in Germany now.
Yeah.
So Nazis fly the Confederate, what is now known as the Confederate flag instead. So, but many Americans will tell you it's not racist at all.
It's tradition.
Oh yeah, it's our heritage. Fuck your heritage. Fuck your family. That's bullshit.
It's about Southern pride, y'all.
Why? Okay. I have a lot of friends that are from the South, and I love them dearly. But I can say this and know that they agree with me. Who the fuck is proud of this heritage? Why? What is there to be proud of, really?
Yeah. I'm sure there's things that you could. I'm sure that they want to look. They want to look at other places. I'm sure they can find parts of their heritage they can be proud of. Just the Confederacy. The Confederacy and white supremacy is not one of those things.
No, it is not.
But,
so Ed, if you could just tell us really quickly how you stumbled into becoming a white supremacist. Give us a little backstory.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Yeah.
We're going to go a little bit deeper than I have on previous interviews with other people because I'm feeling a little bit more confident. This is something that's kind of hard for me sometimes. The first time I ever got arrested, I was 11 years old. I stabbed a kid in the chest for slapping my sister. And I went to a juvenile lockup facility for a little over a year. That was the first time I had ever heard anything about any kind of racism, but it really didn't stick. Like, it was just, okay, well, that was just a bad place and full of a bunch of screwed up people, and I don't ever want to go back there. So I stayed out of trouble pretty much the rest of my childhood. Well, not really stayed out of trouble, but I didn't go to prison anyway. Then when I was 19 years old, I got arrested for involuntary homicide. Again, it was a guy with a knife, except this time he was actually coming after me, and I defended myself, and I went to prison for 12 and a half years until I finally won my appeals and got my conviction overturned. While I was in prison, I was introduced to some people who were members of the World Church of Creativity, or World Church of the Creator. It was led by a man named Matthew Hale. They are an anomaly within the atheist community because they do have a religion that is atheistic. They believe that the white race is their religion. And being an atheist, that drew me in just for the simple fact that they were atheists. And then, of course, you know, I started learning about this religion. It sounded really good. It was healthy. They had this great diet plan, a workout plan, and they were all about, you know, helping better people. Until I got older and started looking at actual science instead of the pseudoscience that they feed you, and the, of course, pseudo-historical facts about the Civil War and other things, and realized, well, I've been getting lied to for all these years. So I'm done with this now. And I tell people it's been about 10 years since I fully stepped away from that movement. I want to honestly say it's probably only been about, I don't know, maybe 5 years or a little less since I've completely disavowed any belief in any kind of racial ideology or ideas. You know, I'm a work in progress. And now, like Jeff said, I have a YouTube channel where I am focusing, you know, trying to focus mainly on hate groups, and not just white supremacist hate groups, but hate groups in general. Anybody that goes after LGBTQ plus community, going after them, some black supremacist groups, and of course the groups that I used to belong to and groups that I used to promote. You know, they are definitely top priority for me.
I was going to say, because I went through quite a few of your videos on hate groups sort of last night, actually. There seems to be a lot you come across who had, I mean, I don't know if this is a common theme throughout these groups or not, but I found a lot of the ones maybe you covered a lot. They seem to have a very warped interpretation of Christianity in a lot of them. Is that something like a common thread that you found with some of the groups you've come across, or that just happened to be the ones you've come across and covered thus far? Or
yeah, you know, religion in general, I would say, is a common theme, because not all of them are Christian based. Some of them claim to be, you know, Christian based, but it's skewed from traditional Christianity. I'm hopefully going to be doing some more videos on the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, which is an offshoot of the Nation of Islam. They follow along with the Abrahamic beliefs somewhat, but in their doctrine, in one of their teachings, they claim that Moses created the white man in a laboratory on the island of Patmos. That has got to be one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life.
That's like, I I'll say that's like they read L. Ron Hubbard and then said, "Hold my beer."
But they claim that because Moses created the white man as an experiment, that's why the white man is savage and cannot ever be tamed.
Have you heard of the term Christian identity when it comes to nationalism?
Yes.
It has to do, it's a variation of Anglo-Israelism.
British identity is the same thing.
Yeah, it's about I guess from what I understand, it's the belief that Europeans are descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, and the main belief that they have is that only white people were created when God created man. Yes. And people of color were created when God created the beasts of the field, and they're therefore referred to as mud people.
That's one belief.
That's one belief. Yeah.
That's one belief. There's another belief that is claimed to be Christian identity that, again, the white race are the true descendants of Israel, but the darker races are actually from Satan tricking Eve into thinking he was Adam and having sex with her. And that's where the darker races come from.
Wow, that is
yeah. Okay. Religion. What are you gonna say?
Well, I mean, what you said about, I really thought that most, white supremacist groups were well based in Christianity. In fact, from what I've read, white supremacy it was birthed from the movement of Christian supremacy. So it surprises me to hear that, there are some offshoots of white supremacy, right? Supremacist groups that do not hold to those ideals. What percentage would you say that is that aren't Christian based?
Yeah, I was already going to say that. I'm going to say it's 50-50. There are a lot of groups that are either atheistic, they're skinheads, whatever, they don't believe in a God, or they follow more traditional Celtic beliefs like Odinism. They do not adhere to Christianity.
All right. I've got to drop for 2 secs, Ed. Then I'll come because I definitely want to come back on that in 2 secs. Sorry, it's just I'm having some audio issues there that I'm trying to sort out.
All right. Yeah. I would definitely say it's 50-50. Especially with the growing numbers of the movement that I used to belong to, creativity. They don't go by, the name that they had when I was a member. Now they're just going by the creativity movement, I guess. And they are growing. Like they are growing fast. It's scary. I think I sent Jeff something on Twitter about somebody in the UK, Reverend Mack, James Mack.
Oh, I've heard the name. I've definitely. I've heard the name.
He's a reverend for Church of Creativity, and like I said earlier, they are an atheistic religion, but they are white supremacists, and I'm trying to let people know they are dangerous. They try and recruit hardcore soldiers.
Wow. Right, go ahead, Jeff. I keep talking.
I was going to say, that's no worries. I just before I dropped there because I was having the audio issues. Because you're saying about like some of the things, those within that kind of Norse pagan tradition that.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, before I was an atheist, that was kind of a tradition I was in for a few years. And again, I want to stress this that. Not all Norse pagans are, white supremacists.
No, not at all.
But we do not, it's definitely got to acknowledge that I think there's a few white supremacists that have adopted that as and I think that's definitely got some roots going back to some of the northern, fascist movements in obviously Germany, and then say Norway and Sweden or whatever in the from the 1900s and whatever, where in a certain way it was like trying. I think it was adopting, because it was something they could adopt as part of their quote unquote cultural identity kind of thing.
Yeah,
albeit a kind of a warped version of that.
Just real quick to hit back on Christian identity, C.K. Blackwood brought up a good point. There's also the curses of Cain and Ham. A lot of Christian identities use that. God cursed them, and their offspring is now the people of color that we see in the world today. So they're not part of the true tribes of Israel. They're cursed, and that's why their skin is black, and we need to dominate them. Yeah.
Now, as for the group that you joined, was there a specific name for it? And also, were there any hard set rules that you had to follow in this group itself?
Yeah, when I joined, they were still known as World Church of the Creator. They use a lot of Latin terms, and the leader of that church or religion, because it is a religion, it's actually recognized as a religion. But their leader was the Pontifex Maximus, or High Priest, who was Matt Hale. And Matt Hale is now serving 40 years in federal prison for trying to put a hit out on a federal judge, because they lost a lawsuit against a Christian church for their name, and had to change the name. So they were going to kill this judge because they weren't allowed to have the name Church of Creativity.
Yeah, I mean,
what?
Yeah, because I haven't done too much looking into that group you were a part of, but what I gathered, they've got this. They do very much fall in that sort of National Socialist tradition. I think they've used I've heard the term racial socialism used, I think, in relation to them. As they switch to what they kind of call it, but
they do. They call it exactly that, racial socialism. It's not just about America. They want all white continents to be just white people. Some of the stricter rules, like Amber or Amanda was asking, and I see my wife Amber in the chat. Don't worry, I'm smiling. But anyway, Amanda, Amanda was asking about some of the rules, and I've talked to Amber quite a bit about some of this stuff, and I guess that's why it's becoming easier for me, because my wife is amazing and supports me, and doesn't blast me for my past. So some of the rules they had, though, were like dietary restrictions. They follow what's known as a salubrious diet. It's pretty much a raw vegan diet. You try and stay away from anything that's cooked or processed. A lot of raw fruits and vegetables and nuts and grains and stuff like that. They do give people a pass on that when you're in prison, of course, because, well, you're in prison. You're not getting stuff like that. You're going to eat what you can eat. So, they're kind of a little bit more lax when you're in prison. But when you're released from prison and you're back out in society, you're supposed to stick to this diet. You're supposed to keep yourself physically fit and ready for battle at all times. And of course, like most religions, women are more subservient. They're supposed to be the homemakers, take care of the kids and all that stuff, do women's work while men do men's work. And typical religious BS, you know.
Well, speaking to that, I did an interview with Robert Reed this past weekend, and we were talking about faith's place in sports. And one of the things that came up was this thing called muscular Christianity. And I feel like that kind of falls in line because it's about maintaining a certain amount, a certain lifestyle in order to be, you know, at your strongest and most athletic in order to defend your Christianity, to defend Christ. Does that, do you think that's kind of the reasoning behind that?
No, the reasoning behind, well, maybe for Christians, but for creativity movement, the reason behind them wanting everybody to stay in shape is for what they call RHOA, which is an acronym for Racial Holy War. They plan on eventually starting a racial holy war that is not only going to be here in the U.S. but worldwide, and reclaim the earth for white people exclusively.
So I'm gonna assume that the Turner Diaries is their idea of a wet dream, then.
Oh yeah. They push that book hard.
Give a brief synopsis of what is involved within the Turner Diaries.
Have you never heard of that?
Have you not heard of that, Manta? I'll let Ed maybe go, because I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, I'll just sort of tell you briefly that it's a novel depicting a race war, and it's I mean, and the thing is, it's like the white supremacists are very much the heroes, the protagonists in this book, and I know it inspired. I mean, one of the people it very famously inspired was Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. But I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, because you probably know well more familiar with this book than I am. But so,
okay, so the Turner Diaries is about a man named Turner, and it gets into talking about, now, like Jeff said, this was written in the 70s, and it's talking about actually the time we're in right now. And it says how someday you're going to be watching police shows on TV where people are getting arrested, which is kind of scary because that's a thing now. You got all kinds of cop shows, you know, and it goes on to say how there's going to be a race war in this country. And if, you know, you don't stand up and side with the white race now, well, you're going to be oppressed by, you know, all these dark races, the blacks and the Hispanics and everything. They're going to start raping your daughters. And if your daughters don't have sex with them, they're going to view you as racist. So it's either have sex or die. And just all kinds of, you know, far-fetched ideas about, you know, how black people are, and they're militant and they just want to kill the whiteys.
That's a really familiar sounding rhetoric that seems to come from perhaps our fearless leader a lot.
Like Jeff said, it paints the white characters in this book as being the heroes because they go and save some people, you know, and stop them, you know, stop these women from being raped or stop them from being killed by black mobs and things like that. It's pretty out.
Well, I'd hate to say it, Manta. The author of that was actually originally from your neck of the woods. Now he's from Atlanta. But, William Pierce. He was originally from Atlanta. But like, he was he was one of the founders of the like American Nazi movement. I suppose, I'll say the founders, but like when it sort of the rebirth of it in the 60s and so on. the Turner Diaries was this novel he written in 1978, which depicts this kind of violent uprising. Whereas Ed said, the white supremacists are very much the protagonists and heroes in this book. I think his name's Earl Turner, the main character, and I mean, one of the things I do seem to recall though is that it involved a plot on blowing up a federal building. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was supposed to be the FBI headquarters in Washington, the Hoover building, and of course we saw it very much echoed in Oklahoma City, or in Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh, like the Turner Diaries, it was his Bible effectively. So,
yeah.
The use of fear mongering like that, pushing this sort of rhetoric that is, not based in facts whatsoever, but it saying that we need to be afraid of other races. That seems to be kind of a theme. Does that happen a lot within the white supremacist groups?
Oh yeah. That, and a lot of them like to try and push pseudoscience, and it is absolute pseudoscience. Now I've told people before, like, I was 19. I was still a kid at the time. I wasn't even grown yet. And I have these older guys that are, late 20s, early 30s, and are handing me documents that look like actual documentation of stuff where scientists said that, black people are a different species than white people. And they get you to believe this stuff. I mean, it's an indoctrination, literally. They present you, like I said, this pseudoscience bullshit.
Yeah.
And if you don't know any better, like I didn't know anything about evolution, but these people are claiming that they're atheists. They don't believe in God. And this is how evolution really works. Don't believe what they tell you in this book. That's written by the Jews, and they're your enemy.
So they claim to have real scientists.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, they do that a lot in climate science as well.
Mm-hmm.
The climate science or climate change deniers tend to bring forward these scientists that, push this insane rhetoric that, it's not real science, it's complete bullshit, but it comes from real scientists. I completely understand that.
Yeah. And don't worry.
I mean, I'm assuming what they're pushing though is probably more eugenics than actual evolutionary biology, though.
Yes. They try and take a lot of their information and say that the Nazi scientists were, these great knowledgeable scientists, and the stuff that they figured out really wasn't wrong. The Jews want you to think that was wrong, because the victors write history. So you can't believe what you read in history, because that's only written by the people who won. This is the real truth, and they use the same tactic with the Civil War. That's not what the Civil War was about. That's not why, they were fighting. They were fighting for white rights and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, let's change the historical narrative in order to pick our little.
Yeah, and I just want to say to Mark Caesar, don't worry, I'm with you. I'm still a kid too, buddy.
Are we all?
The
Camp of the Saints. Did you ever read that?
Yeah.
I read that one.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's not a whole lot different than Turner Diaries. It's just another book to instill fear, drum up racial hatred, I can't remember the characters in that one though. I only read that one once.
Okay.
Is that I'm just trying to, is that the French novel?
Yes, it's about dystopian fiction novel by a Catholic author pushing forward the idea of dirty, deformed, sick immigrants coming to take over France.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew, for pointing that out for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was actually before we went live, before you jumped in, Ed and I actually briefly talked about like France, because France is like probably for over 20 years now has had a big issue. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, you'd be surprised at, because of its sort of you'd think, oh, it's quite a multicultural society, which it is. Yet, in the runoff for the presidency of France, like a couple of years ago, that Macron won against Marine Le Pen of the Front National. And her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who formed Front National, was a dyed-in-the-wool neo-Nazi. However, we had this thing that was termed Eurofascism. Well, there was tradition that really, I suppose, kind of came from Le Pen and other groups. And it was more or less trying to tidy up the image of this, and they weren't going to have all like the sort of skinheads marching out on the streets and giving the Nazi salutes or whatever. It was all going to be, like I said, swash. It was where it was all like, let's make us respect. It was all suits and ties. Let's not talk. We'll talk about national. We can sell people on national identity. Don't talk about racial purity, even though.
Yeah.
And it was very successful in France. It was threatening to make a breakthrough in the UK about 10 years ago. We had the group called the British National Party, who were very much threatening to get very big. Now they won. They got 2 members of parliament elected to the European Parliament. But really, it was a lot of it thanks to some really, really good work by anti-fascist activists in the UK, that a year to a year and a half later, the British National Party very much fell apart, and that they couldn't obtain their electoral momentum got stopped in its tracks. But this was very much a thing. It's very much similar to, if you think, I suppose, as I said to Ed beforehand, an American comparison could be the way like David Duke tried to tidy up the image of the KKK in the sort of 70s and that, and he was somewhat successful with that at the time. And it was, I mean, all the horrible, nasty traditions of the KKK were still there. He was just trying to present it in more acceptable terms.
Yeah.
When you think about the history of the white supremacist movement in our country, it kind of has, you kind of get pictures in your head of backwoods assholes wearing fucking the Klan's robes and all that shit. What kind of, kind of going along the lines that Jeff's speaking on, what kind of ways has white supremacist groups, specifically the one that you were involved in, tried to change their image in order to gain more legitimacy within the American public?
Well, let's just say that when I joined the Church of Creativity, Matthew Hale had graduated law school. All right. Like, these people aren't stupid,
Well, they're kind of stupid.
Well, I mean, they're stuck on that level, but intelligence, intelligence-wise, they're very smart. They have leaders that have all kinds of, doctorates and PhDs and stuff like that. Congressman David Duke was a career politician. He was also a Klansman.
Well, I mean, we know that politicians, at least in America, not the fucking brightest bulbs on the Christmas tree.
But if you're approaching younger kids from a poor neighborhood and you're a politician, or you've gone to college and you tell them, hey, we can help you go to college, come sign up with us. That's, that's a pretty good tactic to get people to come join your movement.
Yeah, that definitely lends to their legitimacy. I can see that.
Especially when the people that are talking to you have all graduated college, and not, these no-name colleges. Matthew Hale graduated from the University of Illinois. He went to a mainstream school, a good school.
Do you know what his degree was in by any chance? Because a lot of the time
he had a law degree. He graduated law school.
Interesting what CK was saying there. So
go ahead, Jeff.
Yep.
I was just interested in what CK Blackwood was saying there. I think I've heard of that one, to be honest. So
yeah. And like myself, while I was in prison, I educated myself. I went to school through what do you call it? I got brain lock now. I was getting, everything sent into the prison correspondence course. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I was taking a correspondence course from Ohio State, and I actually have a associate's degree in paralegal studies. And that helped me get out of prison. That's pretty much the only reason I did it. It's because I needed to learn the law for my appeals. But regardless, here I'm a white supremacist telling people, hey, go to school, educate yourself, get smart. And at the same time, come with us so we can go fight the enemy.
Yeah.
And you get people indoctrinated that way.
Yeah.
They need new leaders and shit because, like CK said, the whole imperial wizards and dragons and shit just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, I mean, you obviously, looking at the clan, it started off as almost a little bit like a frat house kind of thing in a way. And it would have, I suppose it would have all these weird titles or whatever, and it probably wasn't until they invited it just sort of grew, but it started off more as a little bit of a boys' club kind of thing that kind of grew into this thing, and then obviously famously they invited Nathan Bedford Forrest to kind of get involved. He was a very famous Civil War general who was the first. I forget his actual title. I think it was like Imperial Wizard or something. But
he was a Grand Wizard.
Was the Grand Wizard? Yeah. So I'm not always up on clan titles because I don't know how they all rank, but I know there's all these weird titles like Grand Wizard, Imperial Wizard, Cyclops, and there's all some weird. Yeah, I'm not quite familiar with where they all fall in the structure, and then the KKK is a weird thing within itself, that it's not necessarily all one homogenous organization. There's loads of little. They're a group. They're like a loosely affiliated group of separate organizations. They have been for a long time, and
you have some of them that are battling each other because they don't agree on certain doctrine.
That's actually it's probably been one of the sort of saving graces that we've had sometimes within sort of racist and fascist movements in the UK, that sometimes they've ended up. I think when the British National Party fell apart, they did kind of start fighting amongst themselves. However, because there was always a bit of an ideological struggle anyway between this kind of pursuing this electoral route and getting back out on the streets, which ironically enough, if you actually look at the Nazi Party in Germany, this was an ideological struggle within that party between so some of the guys like obviously Hitler and who was supporting more of an electoral strategy, and Ernst Röhm, who was trying to had this strategy of out on the streets and take power by force. So that it was almost so there has been that kind of ideological struggle. But even then, even when the BNP fell apart, we had this other scourge that lasted for a few years called the English Defence League in the UK, who were out on the streets and a lot, and they kind of fell apart. But then they sort of resurfaced under a new name, I think, or it's something called themselves the Football Lads Alliance. So if you don't know some of the history there, going back to the 1970s, there was the National Front, who were very, very openly a neo-Nazi party. When football hooliganism, like soccer hooliganism, became a thing in the UK, they made a very conscious effort to try and recruit from different soccer hooligan outfits and so on. So,
KKK is definitely highly embroiled within Christianity, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I never really associated with anybody in the Klan a whole lot. When I was in New Jersey, we had mostly skinhead groups, and that was another thing that I got involved with out there. I started my own prison gang, state prison skinheads, and I ran that gang for 20 years. That's more prevalent in New Jersey than the Klan or anything like that. Atlantic City skinheads being the biggest skinhead group in the area out there. Even though their name says Atlantic City skinheads, they have branches all over the state. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, they have integrated and become part of the Hammerskin Nation as a bigger whole. The Hammerskin Nation is comprised of many different smaller gangs that will come together as one if need be.
So I mean, obviously, so I want to maybe in a little bit sort of switch gears a little bit on this conversation, but I just want to ask Ed a question. Of all the kind of groups you've come across, so in your opinion, what is the most dangerous hate group in the United States today? I mean, I know that can be very difficult to single it down to just one, but if there's anyone that stands out, in your opinion, that
I mean, I could be kind of biased on this a little bit because of the people that I used to associate with. I consider the organization I used to belong to, the Creativity Movement, I consider them a terrorist group. They actively train people in bomb making, in weaponry. They are a terrorist group, and it's only a matter of time before they get enough people and enough monetary backing before they do something truly dangerous like Timothy McVeigh, or somebody of that sort. It's a matter of time.
I was actually just about to ask, when you think
that's a good, that actually turned into a good segue, actually, because Amanda wanted to go in this direction.
Thank you. I appreciate it. When you think of terrorism in America, what group comes to mind? You think of Islam, but that's not true. White supremacists are by far the most dangerous terrorist group in America, so much so that 73% of domestic terrorism in the U.S. is committed by white supremacist groups. In the time span between 9/11 and 2015, there were at least 26 major terrorist attacks committed by white supremacists. Do you feel, and in fact, since in the time of the Trump era, and because I've said this many times, that Trump has made hate a legitimate and an okay thing to do now. In Trump's era, white supremacist groups have grown 55%. That is a big fucking amount.
Yeah. Now, let's look at the flip side of that coin too, though. There are plenty of black supremacist groups that preach the same thing as the white supremacists. They just preach it for the black race. And I think the most dangerous one I would say in that category is the ISUPK, the International School of Universal Practical Knowledge. They consider themselves Black Hebrew Israelites, which is the black version of Christian identity, basically. But they are a very militant group. I don't understand how their videos stay on YouTube when they openly show firearms and talk about going to war. That's not okay. Like, that's scary.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I'll just say before you join the call, man, Ed and I actually are having a brief talk about them, because the only sort of like like in terms of like black supremacist groups, the one that I'm perhaps most familiar with is the new Black Panthers, who are very much a far cry from the original Black Panthers. Who, I mean, I actually as I've shown a few people here, I mean, I've got this Services to the People's program signed by David Hilliard, who was one of the leading original Black Panthers. But all of the original Black, they want nothing to do with the new Black Panthers whatsoever. But from what Ed was telling me, these guys he's on about, the new Black Panthers are pussycats compared to them.
Yeah.
What Ed was telling me.
Yeah, Black Hebrew Israelites are very, very vocal. There's a video of them on my channel where they're preaching in the street down in Washington, D.C., and they have a microphone and amplifiers and everything, and they're screaming about how it's time to take back the world from the white man, because they are the original man, Africans, and they have their whole list of the lost tribes of Israel. I can't remember them all. I don't know, but it's just fundamentalist religious rhetoric that is preaching hate and destruction, and they would be my top pick for a black supremacist group being dangerous.
Yeah, there's absolutely a side to it.
But going back to what Amanda said real quick, the SPLC in the last 12 months alone has listed over 107 new hate groups, both black and white, in the United States.
Really.
Yeah, Trump is definitely giving a lot of ground to hate groups, and like something's got to give, because it's.
I mean, I think they feel legitimized, I think, by him in a certain way. And I mean, we had a similar backlash in the UK after the Brexit vote, that a lot of even though there was far more to the Brexit vote than just immigration or anything like that. But I will say, without getting too much into it, I feel that the right did dominate that debate too much on both sides of the argument. However, I think once that thing came through, like what the vote came through, suddenly you had a lot of these racist groups, the former English Defence League types, and felt very vindicated and started and wanted to get out on the streets again. Like, now, for example, there was a group, but it didn't all, but it kind of backfired on them in a way that, and we can maybe talk about this a little bit later when we actually get on to how we best combat hate groups. But there was a group of literal, like neo-Nazis, or just call them what they are, called a demonstration in the city I live in, thinking they were going to get this big rally, and we kind of thought, we've got to try and as quickly as we can call something against this and call it a counter demonstration. Here's what happened. About 1,500 people showed up to this counter demonstration. Do you know how many of these Nazis turned up? 11. 11.
Awesome.
And you just talk about humiliating and demoralizing, and like they almost like the counter demo almost followed them back to the train station. And they all and were all laughing at them when they got on the train and with their tail between their legs. And I said, no punches had to be thrown or anything there. Just the sheer numbers alone was just that's deflating enough, really, isn't it?
Nice.
But which I think maybe that could be a bit of a segue. And really, I think there's different schools of thought. How really do we combat these groups? And I think this could be an interesting topic to take this discussion. Is how do we best combat hate groups? Well, maybe I'll head first.
That's a tough one. I think just trying to educate and de-escalate these people, de-radicalize them. There's somebody I'm going to be working with here in the very near future, Jeff Scoop. He is the former commander of the National Socialist Movement, and he has disavowed he's disavowed that group, and he's started a couple of different nonprofit programs. He's got a show called Beyond Barriers that hopefully I'm going to be going on, and we're going to try and come up with, some better ideas on how to fight what's going on right now. Jeff and I were talking before this, and I told him, you will never make a Nazi leave the movement by punching them in the face.
Right?
Now, I'm not saying that there's not a time for that. If you have to defend yourself against these people, by all means, do what you have to do. But if you want to change them and get them out of that movement, why don't you try talking to them? Give them some knowledge. And I have to find this video. I've been looking for it for weeks, and I cannot find it, but I know I will. There's a video, and I know it's on YouTube somewhere. There was a black high school football coach who walked up to his skin, big swastikas all over him and everything, and he gave him a hug, and he asked him, "Why do you hate me?" And the kid just looked at him and said, "I don't know." Well, now that same kid is working with, underprivileged kids in poorer neighborhoods, both black and white, and he is no longer a skinhead. We need to take more of that approach, and now I'm not saying that's going to work with everybody, because you have some hardcore supremacists out there who are not going to change.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely people on the sort of edges of that movement, on the movement, say in the UK, who I'd be willing to have conversations with if I think it's going to possibly achieve something or make them think a little bit. Now, perhaps some of the more hardcore, like there's someone like a Tommy Robinson. I don't think I'd ever, like one of the hardcore leaders of this. I don't think I'd ever convince someone like that.
No,
I'd be very surprised. Let alone some of the people we've had in the UK, like, I think ironically he now lives in Hungary, but Nick Griffin, the former leader of the British National Party, who now apparently lives in Hungary, David Irvin. I don't know if have you ever heard of him, Ed, at all?
I've heard the name. I know it sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's a book. I've got a book here about actually a court case involving him when he tried to sue someone, and it backfired spectacularly on him. But David Irvin is a self-taught quote unquote historian, he's the guy more than anyone else who's largely responsible for creating and popularizing Holocaust denial as a thing.
Yeah.
That's David Irving's kind of, I suppose, contribution to that movement. So yeah, someone like that, you're never going to convince them, I don't think. I hate to be pessimistic. I'd be very surprised you're going to convince people like that. But but I think it's more a matter of marginalizing people like that as much as possible, so they can have the least impact, really, and the ideas they promote can have the least impact.
Yeah, and well, like my beautiful wife Amber said in the chat, hug a skinhead with care. I'm not saying you need to go out and hug all these skinheads. I'm just saying you don't always have to be so brutal, when you're approaching these people, because you never know. A decent, respectful conversation might actually change somebody.
Well, see, I think a lot of the line I hear from some of the more hardcore anti-fascists or whatever, and as I said before, I'm definitely of the opinion that you have to, when they come out on the streets, you've got to counter that. I'm very much of that opinion, although I don't necessarily agree with ironically, a group that I was involved with for many years. Invented this thing called squadding, which was kind of the very much militant fight them on the streets kind of thing, with small but dedicated kind of groups, which I suppose which is kind of what Antifa kind of do now. Ironically, a group that I won't mention names, but the group that actually kind of started this, they kind of came to realize that was a flawed strategy, and if speak out against, no, this doesn't work. You might get a short-term gain at best out of it. And I think, because what I often hear them quote, I quite often hear Leon Trotsky quoted to me on this, because Fame said, if you can't convince a fascist, then equate his head with the pavement. They're forgetting the bit of, if you can't convince them first, which is like, well, why don't you attempt convincing them?
Yeah.
For you to do that, and I'm not necessarily saying right after, if it all fails, knock them out on the spot, but I think it's a very often misunderstood Leon Trotsky quote that I often get thrown at me about this.
Yeah.
Can I speak to the whole Holocaust denial thing really quick?
Go on, Amanda.
It's something that really upsets me, because my family, my father's side of the family, it was almost completely wiped out in concentration camps. In fact, I have actual physical proof here of concentration camps and the Holocaust being a thing. My grandfather made this walking stick while he was in his concentration camp. It was called Bachem. It was one of the ones in Germany. It wasn't one of the smaller ones, but it makes me so angry when so I come across someone who tries to say that didn't happen. Yeah. Is there a reason behind it in order to kind of put forward their narrative that you feel people deny the Holocaust?
Do you want to take that one, Ed?
Yeah, their narrative within the white supremacist movement, and I don't care what group it is, they all say the same thing. It's either the Jewish occupational government or the Zionist occupational government, because the Jewish cabal runs the world, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Holocaust thing, they say that there weren't even 6 million Jews in Germany at the time. But what a lot of people are forgetting, it wasn't just Germany. It was Poland.
My family is from the Netherlands. So
yeah, I mean, this is the thing. They railway rate carded people into I mean, they forget that the biggest concentration, the most famous concentration camp wasn't in the boundaries of what we consider Germany. It was in Poland.
Yes.
And so it's Poland. There was obviously people they captured from Russia. And you go to the other side, right through to France or whatever, and even I suppose even down as far as somewhere like Greece, and of course it wasn't just Jewish people that were executing that. I mean,
Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons,
Jehovah's Witnesses, Romanies, the Romany people. Was probably better known as gypsies. I tend to use the term Romany a bit more, but they all these groups. But I think what they initially started. I think this is where Irving kind of started. What they tried to initially do with this was just to say that things along the lines of, well, it was grossly exaggerated, is where they kind of their starting point from this was. And eventually it was sort of spun very much into this never happened.
See, here's the difference. Here's the difference with white supremacists in America. They don't claim it didn't happen, but they claim the numbers are off, and they also claim that those people didn't die because the Germans gassed them or anything like that. They died because the United States and its allies bombed all the railroads, and they were starving people. And Germany's plan, according to white supremacists, was to eventually take all the Jews and deport them to Madagascar because nobody lived there.
Yes, that's right. I believe that was Reinhard Heydrich. He was very much involved in that plan, but it never.
My family is not Jewish, so the idea that it was about Jews, how they push that, it doesn't fall. And second of all, like I said, most of my family on that side died. I think my grandfather had a brother and a cousin left, and my grandmother's family, her immediate family, completely wiped out. So coming from that background and having people try to tell me to my face that the Holocaust is bullshit, it's just much. So.
Even the puppy said bullshit. I heard him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The puppy is never wrong.
Nope.
But yeah. So I mean, it's a very much a I mean, and like one of the things, like I said again, when this again, I can segue a little bit back into actually combating this thing. I mean, I know we got to obviously win the battle of ideas ultimately.
Yeah.
I often feel that things like the counter protesting or whatever. And as I said, my opinion is just to try and get as many people out as possible on those events. So much so that it doesn't actually even need, like that example I gave, there didn't need to be violence. It was intimidating enough for them. It didn't, when you're outnumbered, when you're outnumbered like 100-1, it's intimidating enough, isn't it? To be fair.
I think one of our biggest issues is the fact that, like I said before, talking about white supremacist terrorism in America, is that it is not really spoken enough about, and we unfortunately have a leadership at the moment that falls on the side of white supremacists. I mean, for fuck's sake, he called them decent people. That there were decent people on both sides. That's not okay.
I'm going to make a controversial statement, but I'm going to stick by it, and I don't care who wants to argue with me about it. In the United States, we have the right to free speech. I get that, but we need to revamp that right. If your speech incites hatred and violence, you do not have a right to say that. That should be a crime.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick by that.
No, I
See,
completely agree.
actually that's not controversial to me as well, because I agree wholeheartedly with that. That I think free speech kind of ends when it's a point of when you're actively harming someone. I mean,
Or just even spreading the hate. I mean, and it should include our president as well. I mean, what he did in Tulsa last week, the calling, the shit he said about the virus as it being what the kung flu or whatever the fuck, talking about, we need to worry about bad hombres breaking into our homes, clearly speaking toward people of Hispanic heritage.
Hispanics, yeah.
He doesn't full out say, fuck the people of color. He's I don't want to say smarter than that, but he knows what he's doing when he puts forward these dog whistles in a sense, and it's dangerous, and he toes that line enough, and he's getting worse with it right now. He's being a little bit more obvious because he's treading water with how badly he is falling behind in the polls and stuff. So he's trying to rein in his base, which is basically just a bunch of hateful assholes. But it really should not be okay for not just inciting violence, but it's a precedent to violence to incite this kind of hate in and of itself. So I completely agree with you, Ed.
Yeah,
I don't want to get Jeff's stream shut down or thrown off of YouTube. So when we're done, remind me to tell you about the video YouTube will not let me make about Trump.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. I'll just be saying I've been obviously we've got to be a little careful with words. What I've found is sometimes if you get 2 or 3 controversial words perhaps in a sentence or whatever, that YouTube will shut you. I had one of my people know I had one of my asterisk streams of Hesse shut down like a couple of weeks ago. I mean, asterisk books, and I think it was just I think it was a couple of controversial words Hesse may have used in a statement to make a point, and YouTube is real funky about that right now. And I got the stream back, but it is frustrating that YouTube is being very trigger happy right now. But I think where was I going to go with this? And I mean, I get see, I often have sort of big disagreements with sort of people who with a lot of, say, liberal type people on like the idea of platforming some of these people, and I'll just say where I go with this, that I understand the idea we've got to win that battle of ideas, and I understand trying to expose these ideas for as stupid and ridiculous as they are, and then you can argue that we should bring them out into the public to expose how stupid whatever these ideas are. But again, and I think this goes back to something I was saying to Ed beforehand about the counter arguments and the time, when there's not a time for violence. I don't think there's any set one rule on any of this, and I think it can be applied to multiple situations. Now, for example, I think when the Oxford Union this is the Oxford University's famed debating society, when they platform people like Tommy Robinson, David Irvin, and Nick Griffin, I think they are legitimizing their arguments by having them. But I mean, like David Irvin, the guy behind Holocaust denial. I'm sorry, there's nothing to debate there. I don't think there's anything to debate there, but they can just use the fact that they've been on a platform like the Oxford Union to gain legitimacy, or like with the British. Now I know it's very difficult with, say, something like in the UK, like the British Broadcasting Corporation, because I know technically there's the argument about free speech of whether that's tied to the state. Well, comes a little bit difficult with the British Broadcasting Company because it's state owned. And when they had Nick Griffin on a very prestigious panel show called Question Time in the UK, it legitimized this guy again, you know, a neo-Nazi.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to be very careful, I think, about this. And I, you know, I mean, and I don't know what people's views on platforming here are.
My views are plain and simple. If they are a known member of any kind of hate group, you don't give them a platform, period. It's simple as that. And I don't care.
I agree with that, honestly, but yeah.
You know, it's like everybody trying to put Louis Farrakhan on a pedestal. He's a hate preacher. Stop giving him a platform. You know, you claim you want equality, but then you claim you want separation, just like white separatists. You can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. And if you're going to keep giving them a platform, you're going to keep feeding this madness that's going on. You know, and these politicians that are known to be involved in the Klan or whatever other group, the American First Party or whatever, quit giving them a platform. Quit letting them speak, because when they speak, their groups gain in numbers.
I don't know why, Ed, but going into this thing, I thought maybe this is the thing you and I were going to maybe disagree with a little bit, but we actually see very much eye to eye on this, actually.
I thought the same thing. I don't know. I guess we're wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think.
Quit with the conspiracy in the chats over there. I see this going on about the dog. Knock it off.
All right. It's happening. You're gonna do it, Ed.
Yeah.
She deserves herself a puppy.
I mean, you know, I mean, me personally, because I mean, it's one of the times I was challenged to a debate by someone on YouTube or whatever, was by a Holocaust denier, and I was like, okay, now they get to go off and crow about me running away if they want to. I don't give a damn. I'm not legitimizing that argument by debating on it. I don't, and I'd be, I sure as hell wouldn't platform, and I wouldn't expect anyone I know in this community to platform it. I don't know. There might be one or two people I could think of who might, but I don't want to name them, but because I don't want to say they would if I'm wrong about that. But
you and I have had discussions about Jeff. I know how much you love the conspiracy theory stuff, but me personally, I won't have, you know, science deniers on my channel for that specific reason.
I get that, yeah.
Platform, because it does not, you know, does not need to be spread. So, and that being said, I mean, obviously stuff like white supremacy needs to be spoken out against, and sometimes it's necessary to, so quote unquote, platform somebody for it, but you just get, for the most part, you just get their ridiculous rhetoric and their attempt to push their ideals instead of you know, respectful, honest, engaging conversation. So there's a fine line there.
Yeah. Matthew Hale, before he was arrested, did a couple of interviews on mainstream television, and granted, his points were ridiculous or whatever, but instead of countering his points, all they would do is shut him down and berate him on camera. And that made him a hero to so many people. You know, they went about it completely wrong. They didn't disprove a single thing he said. They just used ad hominems and then shut him off so he couldn't speak.
This very much happened when Nick Griffin appeared on Question Time, and I mean, one of the people who actually went on that thing to go against him was my own, the person who at the time was my own MP, Chris Huhne, who I'd had some dealings with. Now, anyway, he's no longer an MP because there was a scandal about him, but that's another topic for another day. But I actually had this very conversation with him that now Griffin, as I said to you earlier, was a bit more of a cagier operator. That he wasn't going to necessarily go out publicly and make a statement about Holocaust denial or anything, but he would he would make an issue with something like immigration, which he knew they could get ground on that. And sometimes, I said, sometimes it's very difficult when you're dealing with groups that are quite slick. You've got to look beneath the surface a little bit. When they had them on, then they all tore into him about trying to expose the fact that he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, which he absolutely it was, and they were right about that. But when it actually came to a debate on immigration, every other person on that panel, my MP, who was a Liberal MP, the Conservative MP, and the Labour MP, and I forget who else was on the panel. There was one other person. They all gave ground to him on that issue, and I'm like, thank you. You've just legitimised the British National Party by doing that. Well done. Yeah. Good on you.
Yeah, you made it look like he's being honest because you're not debunking anything he has to say.
So like I said this to Chris. Why didn't you actually take him on the subject of immigration? He said, "Well, it's not a popular thing." It's like, and I said, "Well, this is the problem with having like." If you are, I said, personally, I don't agree that he should have been platformed in the first place. But if he's going to be platformed, don't send a bloody politician against him because they're looking for the popular kind of answers. Sometimes the popular answers, you've got to make an argument which may be unpopular at first, but you've actually got to make an argument that can make people think. This is what none of them did with him. And they all, on the issue of immigration into the UK, well, I actually kind of agree with Mr. Griffin that there's too much, but he's still it's like, well, it's all right, very well then saying that he's a Nazi or whatever, but you've just said he's got a point. You've just legitimised the man.
Well, and speaking about things being popular, I get it if people have some popularity, whatever, you're a mainstream YouTuber, you have 50,000 subscribers, whatever. If you don't know anything about racism or white supremacy or anything like that, please do not speak on it. If you're getting your information off the internet, don't speak on it. If you want information about white supremacy, come to somebody like me. Go to somebody who actually knows about it before you make a video and actually vindicate these people and justify what they're saying, because you're making them look like the victim and you're giving them ground. That needs to stop.
Yeah. I would agree with that as well. I mean, as you could probably tell that I'm not entirely ignorant on hate groups in the UK and the way some of them operate, as you could probably tell from this conversation. I still wouldn't consider myself necessarily an expert, but I know enough about their sort of history, sort of post-war history, shall we say, to have a working kind of knowledge of the British far right, I'd say. But there's people, but this again, if I was going to make a video on it, there's people I would reach out to and consult to fact check a few things first.
I put a video up about hate symbols. Sign language is not used in the white supremacy movement. Literally.
Is that this thing kind of thing?
Yeah, this thing. This does not mean white power. It never has. No.
I don't know where this came from, but in the UK, I don't know if that was a thing. If this was a thing in the United States, this was kind of a thing of saying I'm okay by doing that symbol at one time. That's kind of what it meant.
That's what it means here. Like, okay, got it.
Yeah,
I'm good. That's okay. That's what that means.
That's cool. That's cool because I've noticed sometimes with these things that there's, like with words and that, when I speak to Americans, there's different meanings in different cultures. Like for example, you said the sign language. Like I won't do it on camera, but like the flipping the bird kind of thing, which has become more prevalent in the UK recently. But traditionally, you know, we would stick 2 fingers up as a kind of taunt like that, you know. But
yeah, I can see from I can see from the chat a couple of people learned some stuff from that video, because somebody put out a whole list of literal, you know, actual sign language saying that these were signs of, you know, hate groups. You're going to get some deaf person punched in the face for trying to talk.
Yeah.
You know, don't put out disinformation because you think it's funny, because now you're making white supremacists, you know, look like the good guys, because they're going to be like, see how ignorant these people are? See how they attack us for no reason?
Well, it's like it's actually something I think Hissy and I actually addressed this on one of our Asterix streams. Now, those who may have seen them, yeah, we have actually had to deal with some legitimate issues with 1 or 2 of those books, with some of the caricatures of black people that were drawn in those books in the 1960s. And you know, we couldn't be ignored. We had to address them. But like, but I could also see, like, I think it was something, someone got triggered because they saw there was a depiction of a Roman soldier giving a certain salute, which again I'm not going to do on camera. But we actually had to explain to people that that salute is not something that the Nazi Party started. That was the Roman army salute, which was adopted by Mussolini's fascists, and then copied by German. But it has its origins in Rome.
I mean, they took the salute. They took
quite accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, they took the eagle. They stole the swastika. You know, everything they had came from someone else.
That being said, though, do you feel like when something like, you know, the whole OK symbol thing, a rumor like that is spread around, do you think it eventually itself becomes adopted as such?
No. Because the hand signs and everything that they used for that, white supremacists will not do that. They will hold them to a higher standard. And I guarantee you, you will never see a white supremacist saying that, you know, people of color suck. You will never see that.
Considering where I live, there are a lot of hateful white kids in my son's school. I don't know, you know, a lot of kids kind of tend to take on their parents' ideas of race and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that's the reason why my son doesn't have a lot of white friends here, because there's just a good majority of the white kids in my son's school are, you know, have conservative parents that are hateful. And I know that when that rumor was spread around, there were so many posts of these assholes making that symbol. That's just why, you know, I'm not saying necessarily the real white supremacists, but people who have those leanings.
The only gesture that you can actually look out for, and I should have put this in my video, if you see somebody put 3 fingers over their heart, because that makes a W over your heart, and that's it. That is the only hand sign you will ever see from a white supremacist, other than a salute.
The obvious one, yeah.
The salute, of course. But other than that, no. Somebody saying okay still means okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, even in like the UK or whatever, they're very conscious when they come out on the streets now that you don't see them. Very rarely will you actually see them like giving the salute or Zekiling or anything like that. They, again, even now they try to kind of cover. It kind of comes out when they get frustrated, like I said, like in situations where I brought out the other day, when there's a counter demonstration that's like so overwhelming, they're kind of getting drowned out. They get a bit frustrated. That's when it tends to come out. But they generally, because they know the label of Nazi is toxic. And this is another thing I definitely want people to go away from, take away from this stream as well. And that is, please do not throw labels like fascist and Nazi around loosely. It's one of my big pet peeves. And now I know some people, again, I'm going to say something that may not be popular right now. I often hear those terms thrown out about Trump. No, don't throw it out like that. He is an asshole, and he's got some. I would say the guy's a racist on a lot of levels, but I think the more loosely you throw those labels around, the less their impact it is. Now, you know, one of the things we successfully managed to do in Britain was label these people for what they were, to the fact that they themselves really do not do anything they can not to be labelled that. It's one area where we have been successful in Britain, but I'm not saying we're perfect on this either. But that would be another takeaway I would give about throwing some of these words around a little loosely. And I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Ed, but that's something I feel quite strongly on.
Yeah, you know, social justice warriors really need to do your homework before you start labeling anything or anybody. I get it. You want to be involved. You want to be on the right side, whatever, but you can't put out disinformation. You know, that's only harming everybody. It's giving power to the people you claim to be fighting against, and it's demonizing those that you say you're representing, because you're putting out disinformation. You know, so
yeah,
like Jeff said, don't just throw words out there like, oh, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist.
I won't mention her name, but she is a creator in the community through that label at me once, just for having a disagreement with her. And I'm not going to throw her name out there or give her attention. And through that label on me, and I said, I had to explain that you do know my picture is up on Red Watch, which was a Nazi site. It's been shut down now, thankfully, but it was in a site run by neo-Nazis I try to identify, dox, and harass anti-fascist activists. Now, it was taken of me because I was out back in 2009 or 2010 doing a leaflet campaign against the British National Party for an organisation called I was trying to think, was it Hope Not Hate or Unite Against Fascism? I was leafleting for. I can't remember. There was a couple of groups back at the time, but the message we were putting out was use your vote, but don't vote for these people, because we could give them examples. This is what these people are. Now, just so happened, what I didn't realise is the street that I was going down, that the actual one of their candidates for local council happened to live through that street, saw me, come out and photographed me, and ran away because I was going to go and say to him, says, you can put my photo on Red Watch, but just remember, I know where you live. I was so tempted to. I really was tempted to do that, but yeah. So there's an active attempt to dox and obviously, obviously put my face out there and whatever, so these people could target you. And I'm like, don't be throwing that. Do not be throwing words like fascist at me, for goodness sake. Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, I get it. People want to help, and they want to work towards change. That's great, but when you're not putting out actual information, if you're putting out disinformation, you're harming things. And if somebody like me calls you out, I was telling Jeff before this stream, I had somebody literally ask me, Well, what would you know about white supremacy? I did that for 20 years. I know a whole lot about it, so I'm telling you, you're wrong. And they're like, well, you're still just a racist. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you that the information you have is wrong. Please don't put that out there because you're going to make these people look intelligent.
Kind of trying to bring it back to the subject of how do we fight hate and white supremacy. I think it goes along the same lines as just educating ourselves and being able to. This is something that I've spoken about with Marie Delafont, both in our interview with Matt Big and in the Six Packs this morning, is being able to recognize when we're wrong and learn from that and move on from that instead of, doing what stuff like Trump does and never being able to admit we're wrong and kind of digging our feet in the sand and staying there. It's okay to be wrong, but it's we need to be able to continue to learn and continue to grow as people and being able to educate both ourselves and our children, anybody that we know really about the correct, I don't know how to put this. The real issues within hate groups and how.
Let me say it this way. People need to stop thinking that Black people can't be racist because of. Listen, Black people can be racist. And one thing we need to do, especially for the BLM, and any protest movement going on right now, find those ones that are inherently racist and weed them out. Do not accept racism on either side at any level. If they call for, any kind of physical harm to another ethnicity, you need to distance them. They are not helping. And that goes for both sides. If you see somebody in your own ethnicity, if you're white and somebody is promoting white racism, you need to either try and educate them or distance them. And the same thing for, people of color. If somebody is inherently racist and they want a race war, you need to distance them. They are not fighting for equality, and they are the problem. They are continuing what we have going on around the world, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. It starts with us now.
Yeah. I mean, there's something I could go into a bit here, but I actually kind of need to start winding this stream up a little bit because Man's got to shoot off in a little bit. So, Ed, would you just like to, before we start, would you just like to plug yourself and let us know what you've got coming up?
So I am the grumpy old dude. Again, I am a former white supremacist, and my channel focuses mainly on hate groups. I do have a video coming out Sunday that is debunking a comment on my channel about Nathan D'Amigo, who was one of the leaders in Identity Europa. So that's going to be pretty interesting. I'll have that out Sunday for anybody who wants to see me dance again. That'll be in there. I'm working on some projects with Jeff Scoop. Hopefully I'll have him on my channel soon. And hopefully I'll be going over to his show, Beyond Barriers. And we're going to be talking about pretty much the same thing we're talking about here. How can we make a change? How do we get past this and make things better? So that's pretty much what I'm working on right now.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Manta, have you got anything you'd like to plug quickly?
Susan Skeptic on Sunday night on Living Critically. Me and Matt Pig are finishing an interview we had started on his channel about activism. And tomorrow at 5 p.m., thank you, honey, 5 p.m. Eastern, Dark Matter
Eds
and
as well.
I will be discussing Stranger Things, so that should be fun. Everybody loves Dark Matter. He's fucking amazing. So
cool. I'll just play. I've got just one thing that I know coming up over the weekend. I'm doing my regular Asterix stream with Hissy. I think it's on her channel this week. So it'll be Sunday about 1 p.m. my time. So we'll be doing that on Hissy's channel. I think we're doing Asterix the Legionary this week. So thanks very much for coming on, Ed. And Amanda, thank you very much for agreeing to come on as well and co-host with me. I think this has been an awesome conversation. I think we need to do another. I know you're very busy next month, Ed, but I think we need to try and arrange to do a follow-up to this, because this has been a really good conversation.
Yeah, we can do something.
Okay, cool. Right, so thanks to everyone in the live chat as well. We've had a very good, thriving live chat throughout this today as well. So I've been Jeff, Godless Scummer. So for myself, Momma Atheist, and the grumpy old dude, the G.O.D himself, we shall say salute and goodbye.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming.
Bye.
Right.